Lessons from history. I want to focus on one individual from the Second World War who, prior to the war, was a Protestant pastor. And the lesson is, don't be deceived by titles, even if they're in the church. His name was Ernst Biberstein. About 2/3 of the way through the Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem, you see a number of black boxes with photographs on them, and his photograph is on one of them. The reason they have black boxes is because you don't see that much just from the photograph, and you need to look inside and see what the record was. Well, this Protestant minister joined the SS and became part of the Einsatzgruppen. There were 4 of these groups, A, B, C and D, who, when the Germans took over Poland, they were let loose to murder Jews. It was before the Wannsee Conference and the final solution to gas the Jews, all respectable bureaucrats who decided that one. But the Einsatzgruppen preceded the gassing, and they shot 1.5 million Jews across Eastern Europe. They were given a license to murder. And Ernst Biberstein was part of Einsatzgruppen C. He headed up the Einsatzkommando 6. And when Heydrich was assassinated in Prague, Ernst Biberstein became the head of Einsatzgruppen C. They cut a swathe of murder and mayhem across Ukraine. So this Protestant minister, ordained in the church in Germany prior to the war, Churchill said, war makes monsters of us all. So we should beware and not necessarily point fingers. But we have to point to the lesson of history, that you can be completely brainwashed and thinking that you're trained up to do good, and then in your own self-righteousness you can wreak havoc and evil. So right across, and he personally, gunned down innocents, men, women and children into open graves, right across the Ukraine. Now we often focus, and I will on a future occasion focus on Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the great legacy that he's left us and the integrity that he showed that led to his death. But just remember that if you think you're on a righteous crusade, check back to the scriptures, check back to the sanctity of human life, that every life is has worth, intrinsic worth, because it's created in, and each one is created in the image of God. So the tragedy of Biberstein, he was in the Nuremberg trials under the American military courts after the great Nuremberg trial that everyone remembers. And ironically, in the 50s, he was released and he went back to ministry in the church. And it's not to say that any individual and any sin cannot be forgiven. The scripture says, Lord, if you were to mark our sin, who will stand? And in Romans 4, blessed is the man whose sin the Lord will never count against him. But just remember that in church history and in specific periods of church history, those who even take the cloth and identify themselves as Christians and Christian leaders have done terrible things to our shame, and it's quite right that this should be pointed out. Go into the history books and read about Ernst Biberstein.